Kamala Harris has announced Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, a former schoolteacher, seasoned Washington lawmaker, and Army National Guard veteran from Nebraska, as her vice presidential pick for the upcoming election. This decision has generated significant interest and debate. Here's a detailed look at Walz's policy positions, how they've been reflected in Minnesota's legislation, and the controversies he faces. In healthcare, Tim Walz has championed the expansion of healthcare access throughout his tenure. He is a staunch supporter of the Affordable Care Act and has focused on improving healthcare affordability and access for Minnesotans. Under Walz's leadership, Minnesota has continued to leverage the expanded Medicaid program, providing health coverage to low-income residents. Walz has also advocated for measures to reduce prescription drug costs and enhance mental health services. For instance, in 2019, Walz signed a law allocating $100 million for mental health services and addiction treatment. This funding aimed to address the increasing demand for mental health support and substance abuse treatment in the state. Despite the expansion of the Affordable Care Act in Minnesota, patients continue to face issues with healthcare access, particularly in rural areas, and high out-of-pocket costs. Navigating the complexity of insurance plans and billing remains challenging for many. Additionally, complaints about the quality of care, including provider communication and coordination, persist. LGBTQ+ rights. Walz's recent actions in the realm of LGBTQ+ rights have been particularly debated. In response to the national debate over gender identity and medical treatments, Walz signed legislation that designates Minnesota as a sanctuary state for minors seeking gender transition treatments. The 2023 law allows out-of-state minors to access hormone therapies and gender-affirming surgeries in Minnesota, regardless of the restrictions imposed by their home states. Additionally, the legislation includes provisions impacting state emergency custody and revoking parental rights. It allows minors to pursue gender transition treatments even if their parents or guardians oppose the treatment. This provision aims to ensure that gender-diverse youth receive care without interference from guardians. This law underscores the ongoing national discussion about minors' rights in the context of gender identity and medical care. Education. Walz has made a strong commitment to increasing funding for public education. He believes in addressing disparities in school resources and supporting teachers to ensure equitable educational opportunities for all students. In 2021, he signed into law legislation that included investments in early childhood education and additional support for students with special needs. The goal was to reduce class sizes and enhance teacher pay, particularly in underserved areas, thereby aiming to improve educational outcomes. Minnesota's students typically score above the national average on standardized tests, achieve high graduation rates, and demonstrate strong college readiness through advanced placement participation. However, significant challenges remain, including substantial achievement gaps between white students and students of color, and inadequate funding for schools in lower-income neighborhoods, which affects the quality of education and resources available. Minnesota Department of Education statistics point to Black and other students of color scoring 30 points or more lower on achievement tests, compared to whites. Additionally, student performance varies widely by geographic location, with rural and economically disadvantaged areas facing particular difficulties. Addressing these disparities requires further investment and reform. Climate and environment. Walz has positioned himself as a leader in environmental protection and climate action. He supports policies aimed at reducing carbon emissions and transitioning to renewable energy sources. In 2021, Walz introduced the Climate Action Framework, which sets goals for reducing Minnesota's carbon footprint. The framework includes investments in clean energy infrastructure and initiatives to expand electric vehicle charging networks. This plan reflects Walz's broader commitment to combating climate change and promoting sustainable energy practices. Public safety and criminal justice. Walz has also focused on criminal justice reform and improving public safety. This occurred shortly after the incident involving George Floyd, which took place in Minneapolis, Minnesota. This resulted in Floyd's death, which occurred while he was in police custody, sparking widespread protests and civil unrest both locally and across the United States. He began to advocate for policies that enhance police accountability and address racial disparities within the criminal justice system. In 2020, he signed an executive order creating a task force on policing and criminal justice reform. This task force is tasked with examining and addressing systemic issues within law enforcement practices to improve accountability and community relations. Despite these achievements, Walz's tenure has faced several controversies. His handling of the COVID-19 pandemic, particularly his executive orders on business closures and mask mandates, drew significant criticism. Critics argued that these measures were excessively restrictive and detrimental to the state's economy, leading to protests and legal challenges. His economic policies, including proposals to raise income taxes on high earners and businesses, have also faced opposition. Critics claim that such tax increases could drive businesses out of the state and adversely affect economic growth as well as lead to further unemployment. Additionally, while Walz's increase in education funding is widely supported, there are concerns about the efficiency of the allocation and its impact on educational outcomes. Some argue that the additional funding may not translate directly into improved performance or address underlying issues in the education system. The recent LGBTQ+ rights legislation has intensified the national debate over gender-affirming care. Critics of the law express concerns about potential conflicts with other states' regulations and the implications for parental rights and custody issues. Tim Walz faced criticism for his delayed response in calling the National Guard during the 2020 unrest following George Floyd's death, as the initial hesitation contributed to escalating violence and property damage. Critics argued that quicker deployment could have mitigated the chaos, while Walz defended the delay as a cautious approach to balance public safety with the right to protest. As Kamala Harris introduces Tim Walz as her running mate, these issues will undoubtedly shape the upcoming election. Walz's record on healthcare, LGBTQ+ rights, education, climate, and criminal justice, alongside the controversies surrounding his policies, will be central to the campaign discourse. We want to hear your thoughts on Tim Walz's policies and his potential impact as vice president. Please share your opinions in the comments and don't forget to like and subscribe for more updates on this developing story.